Welcome to Beyond the Mask. Today's topic is one that's increasingly relevant in ORs across the country. What are the anesthetic implications for patients who vape? As vaping and e-cigarette use continue to rise, especially among younger populations, anesthesia and providers are being asked to navigate a new set of challenges, from airway reactivity and hemodynamic instability to altered pharmacologic responses. Vaping presents unique risks and can't be ignored. In this episode, we break down the science, review emerging evidence, and discuss best practices for pre-op assessment, intraoperative management, and post-operative care of patients who vape. Whether you're in a hospital, surgery center, or office-based practice, this is essential information for staying sharp, safe, and informed.
CRNA Financial Planning is a sponsor of Beyond the Mask podcast. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as investment advice. Plus, did you know listening to our podcast can earn you Class B credits? For details on how to submit, visit the CE credit section at beyondthemaskpodcast.com. Welcome to Beyond the Mask, innovation and opportunities for CRNAs and advanced practice nurses, with certified financial planner Jeremy Stanley and CRNA Sharon Pierce. Jeremy Stanley has worked with CRNAs for more than 23 years, and Sharon Pierce is a former president of the AANA and the NCANA. Join us as we leave the operating room and learn the latest in the CRNA and advanced practice nurse industries. Beyond the Mask starts in 10, 9, 8, 7.
Wonderful. And along with us today, we have Beth Wilkes. Beth, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Jeremy and Sharon.
We're excited. I know that Beth always tells us that she is one of our number one listeners and she listens religiously. So we're excited to have you on the show as well.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say congratulations on the podcast. I can remember when Sharon came to Greenville, South Carolina for a meeting, and she said, we just launched this podcast. And I said, oh, I'm so excited about this. So yes, I'm a huge fan, and I think I've died and gone to heaven to be a guest host today.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know what, Beth, it's no joke to smoke.
It is no joke to smoke. Yes, that is right.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about you and your background, and then we'll kick it off.
Oh, well, yeah, actually known y'all for, I think, a little while because I was a North Carolina resident for about 10 years. I am an old CRNA, newer educator, but I went to the University of South Carolina College of Medicine, graduated my master's degree in nurse anesthesia in 2004. I went when I was just a baby. And, so my husband and I did a little moving around. We lived in Tennessee for a couple years and then moved on to Charlotte. And I think that's where I met you, Jeremy, a long time ago.
You were at Novant, right?
I was at Novant, for 10 years. It was the glory days of Novant.
That's right.
It was good times. And then, about 9 years ago, I woke up one day and told my husband I wanted to move to a small town and work in a different kind of practice. And so we moved to Aiken, South Carolina. Both of us consider South Carolina our home, although we had never lived in Aiken. It's a small town on the Georgia-South Carolina border near Augusta. So I was practicing clinically, and then I was the clinical coordinator for the USC nurse anesthesia students, and I said, I got to go back and get my doctorate because I want to teach. So I actually joined the Augusta faculty in January 2023. And then I just recently transitioned over to your alma mater, Sharon.
Yeah.
So I joined the Wake Forest faculty. Yeah, just not even a month ago. So I'm very happy to be commuting. I have high schoolers, so we're not moving just yet. But yeah, Wake Forest has such a rich tradition, and I couldn't say no. So
awesome. Well, I saw that. I was going to mention that on the show. So congratulations on that. We're glad to have you back in North Carolina
to
some extent, anyway.
So does this mean you're going to move eventually?
Eventually,
okay.
Yes. Yeah. So just got to get the boys out of high school.
So, Beth, how did you get interested in this topic? What brought you here?
Back in 2020, and this is probably January or February, pre-pandemic for sure, before everything shut down and we weren't doing any elective cases, I had a patient come in one day for a lap chole, and she was 42 years old and seemingly healthy. And, took her to the OR, put the monitors on, and she had her heart rate in the 30s. and with multifocal PVC. So she was having some ectopy. And so I'm like, what is going on? So of course we can't, in anesthesia, we can't insufflate their belly with carbon dioxide, blow up their belly. They usually get bradycardic. So we treated her with some of our normal stuff, like glycopyrrolate. She had no response. Then we went to atropine. Still had no response. Still bradycardic. And so after questioning her, she admitted to vaping that morning. And as we'll talk about later, usually the responses to vaping are like tachycardia and hypertension, so higher heart rate. And so I'm not a cardiologist. I can't say for sure that that's the vaping was what made that happen that morning. We canceled the case and sent her to cardiology for follow-up. But it's really the first time it got my attention, that this is going to become a problem. And so that's when it kind of really, I started to think about it. And then I just mentioned my boys. I have 2 teenage boys. They're 15 and 17. And vaping is becoming increasingly prevalent in the teenage population. Very much so. 1 in 10 high school students has admitted to vaping in the past 30 days, and 1 in 22 middle schoolers, according to the CDC.
Wow.
Yes. And my boys are ninth and 10th grade. When we moved to Aiken, we held him back for my older one for a year. He should be a senior, but we get a bonus year. And there's been some work already done in this area a little bit. Daniel King's doing a little bit of work on vaping. Aaron Foley has done work. And so shout out to them. But I really started to get interested in it when I heard my kids talking about people vaping in the bathrooms.
Wow.
And I said, I got to look at this. And I want to know how it affects our patients under anesthesia.
My goodness. So what's some history about vaping?
Well, actually, an electronic cigarette or electronic nicotine delivery system kind of dates back to the 1920s. There was a gentleman by the name of Joseph Robinson who created a prototype, an electronic cigarette, but it was never manufactured, never produced. And so really it was about 1965. There's a gentleman by the name of Herbert Gilbert. And he created really the first electronic cigarette. He started working with some solvents to use nicotine, but it just really didn't take off because everybody was still smoking back then, right? Like that's the year my mom graduated from high school, and she had been smoking since she was like 13. So, and I think that year, 1965, 500 billion combustible cigarettes were smoked that year. So it does go back to the 1960s, but when it really started to take off was 2003. There was a gentleman by the name of Han Leek. He's still alive. He's a Chinese pharmacist and inventor. And he started smoking when he was age 18. And he wanted to, unfortunately, his father got diagnosed with lung cancer and passed away. And so after his father's death, he wanted to create a safer alternative to the combustible cigarette. And so he started working again with food solvents. So he did credit Herbert Gilbert from 1965 with the first original prototype. But that's really when it started to take off. And the first electronic cigarette was called the Ruyan, and it came out in China in 2004. And then it hit the market in the U.S. in 2007. And I really think things started to change for us after that.
Wow. So who is the demographic that is utilizing this the most right now?
Well, a report was published in January, and vaping is going up amongst all adults, except for those about 65 and older. It's going up significantly. But the largest demographic are the ages 21 to 24. And then, of course, like I said, the teenage population is starting to go up as well.
21 to 24. Wow.
So how are vaping products different from traditional cigarettes?
Well, they don't have the advantage. The nice thing is that they don't have some of the, the
Tar,
the carbon monoxide, the things that are really bad. But they do have other health effects, as we're starting to find out more and more.
So what about Juul? I mean, is that
That's
different?
the big one you see, right?
Right?
Yeah, there's all kinds of brands. Juul. Yeah. So Juul is different. So a lot of the vaping products use freebase nicotine.
That sounds druggy.
I was like,
Freebase?
freebase? Don't they do that with cocaine or something?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, Juul is in the form of nicotine salts. And so one of the things that makes that different is they can actually get a higher or a quicker hit off of the nicotine when they inhale it via salts. So one fun thing, when I started getting interested in this topic, my husband and I got into our car. And like I said, we live in a small town. We live in Aiken, South Carolina. It's a town of about 30,000 people. And I said, I want to know how many vaping retailers there are within 30 minutes of my home. Not 30 miles, but just 30 minutes. I can't show you the pictures here on the podcast, but we counted 11 vaping retailers within 30 minutes. You just hit one after the other, even a small town.
It used to be in the South, it was churches.
That's right.
Now it's vaping.
Now it's vaping retailers or smoke shops. And that doesn't even count all of the gas stations. And the gas stations sell Juul very frequently. You walk in there and you see it right away. And so one of the problems that, can happen is that the nicotine the amount can range from anywhere from 0 milligrams per ml up to 50 milligrams per ml. And just for your frame of reference, a traditional combustible cigarette has 10 milligrams of nicotine, and about 1 to 2 milligrams is inhaled or absorbed when you inhale it.
Wow. So you're getting it quicker at a much higher dosage.
So it's like taking a shot.
Kind of, yeah. So,
and I'm sure you immediately get the effects, right?
You do, yeah.
What are the effects? I've never in my life. What is it?
Some people report that they have, anxiolysis, like it relieves their anxiety. And there's different kinds of vaping products. There's first, second, third, and fourth generation devices. And they're all a little bit different. The first generation, when it first came out, like I told you, that 2004 Ruyan that Han Leek created, it looked like a basic cigarette. You just inhaled into it. And then when it was out of the e-juice, which is one of the components of it, you just threw it away. Now a lot of them have rechargeable batteries, so you can keep using it. You have refillable cartridges, so you can customize what's in the e-juice, the liquid. And then also some even look like a little USB flash drive, like you would use to bring,
they carry them in their pockets.
Yeah,
really?
So they can hide them in their backpacks. Teachers won't even notice, or parents. So as a parent, that concerns me greatly, right? So, and like I said, my kids talk about vaping and...
I just wonder, do they get sick? Because I always tell this story. Like, I remember when I was in high school, I went to school, 9th grade, and I saw these people outside smoking. You could still smoke in a certain area there. And I was like, wow, all the cool kids are out there, right?
Yep, right.
So I went to the store like the next day or two, and there was a guy in front of me, bought a pack of cigarettes, which I knew nothing about. And he got Pall Mall filterless. All right. Good for him. Good for me. I bought a pack of Pall Mall filterless. I took those bad boys to school. I went out there at lunch. Man, I was puffing away. Puffing. I think I smoked half the pack. And I went back to class, and I'm sitting in class, and the room starts spinning. I am like nauseated.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to... it was a horrible feeling. Finally ended up going to the office, and I was like, you need to call my mom to come pick me up. And so I get in the car. I'll never forget it. I get in the car, and she goes, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know, Mom.
I might have smoked a cigarette or two.
Feel good. She goes, why do you smell like cigarettes? And I was like, all the kids were standing out there smoking.
And I wanted to be cool too,
I didn't
right?
say I was. I said all the kids were standing out there smoking, and I was out there with them.
Mom, that's all.
Well, we had a terrible smoking history in my family growing up. My grandfather, my dad on my paternal side, my dad's dad, he passed away in 1970 before I even knew him. And my dad always used to joke growing up, if you're a Brosnan, which is my main name, and you want to get lung cancer, just start smoking, But even my grandfather, the stories I've heard, he wanted to just hold it, even the day he died. And that's the same thing as this Chinese inventor, Han Leek. He wanted something to hold. And even I've read that he didn't like nicotine patches to help him stop smoking because they gave him bad dreams. So when these came on the market in the U.S., they were really heavily marketed as smoking cessation aids.
Yes.
And that they were healthier alternative. But the more research that keeps coming out, we're finding they're not that healthy, actually. They're actually causing some damage. And so talking about the Juul, they recently made headlines. They were in regulatory limbo for years. They were under a lot of lawsuits, a lot of parent anti-tobacco groups, and the FDA recently came out in July and said, you know what, your products are fine, you can keep going. And so it made a lot of parents and anti-tobacco groups very upset.
Now, there was one e-cigarette that had a liquid in it. Was that water? And I always understood that had to be heated up to like 1,200 degrees to get the mist. I don't know if that's true or not. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So the basic anatomy of an e-cigarette, there's basically 4 parts. There's a mouthpiece, there's a reservoir, there's a heating element, and there's a battery. And so there's that liquid that's in there, and the liquid is vaporized by the heating element. And as the device heats the liquid, the user will produce that aerosol or the vapor. And the battery powers that heating element. It's usually a lithium ion battery. And you're talking about the temperatures. The heating element actually operates at temperatures between 100 and 300 degrees Celsius. It gets very, very hot. And
Wow.
This becomes really important because there's a lot of case reports of patients getting burned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from the battery either short-circuiting or exploding. There's even a case report of the battery exploding and it caused the mouthpiece to dislodge and it wedged between C1 and C2 on a young male.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and he was taken to the OR, had a foreign body removal, and recovered without neurologic sequelae.
Wouldn't that be the case? So I wasn't far off. It's still several hundred degrees.
It's hot. Yeah, it's really hot.
Wow.
One of the places I do still practice clinically in Augusta, Georgia, it's one of the largest burn centers in the Southeast. And I'm always asking the CRNAs, I don't work on the burn side, but I'm always saying, do you see burn injuries from vaping? And they're like, yeah, we've seen some. Definitely. So.
Wow. What types of things are found in these e-cigarettes?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Jeremy. So usually there's always nicotine, and then there's has to be a solvent, something to put the nicotine in. And the solvents are usually propylene glycol or vegetable glycerin. So those are FDA-approved food additives, and they're safe to ingest, but they're not necessarily safe to inhale. So I don't know if you guys remember, like back in 2000, I kind of was sketchy on this, but there was an outbreak of popcorn lung or bronchiolitis obliterans, and it was microwave popcorn plant manufacturing workers. And so they were, one of the flavorings used to make that buttery flavor in microwave popcorn is something called 1,3-butadiene or diacetyl is the other name for that. And so, like I said, it's not safe to inhale. It's okay to ingest. But some of the symptoms of popcorn lung are coughing, shortness of breath, dyspnea, trouble breathing. And there was actually a Texas cheerleader that just made headlines back in April. She was 16, and she had been vaping since she was 14. She had started vaping after she returned to school after the pandemic because she was experiencing anxiety. And so she's a cute cheerleader and called her mom and said, I cannot breathe. And so it's pretty sobering images of her on a non-rebreather mask in the ED, encouraging people not to do this anymore. Now she relies on a rescue inhaler to get through the day.
Are you a resident or CRNA looking to transition into independent practice? The AANA and Beyond the Mask are here to help you thrive as your own boss. Introducing the 1099 CRNA Institute, taught by Beyond the Mask host Jeremy Stanley and Sharon Pierce. This comprehensive educational series provides detailed guidance on business structure, legal and tax implications, and financial management tailored specifically for 1099 CRNAs. Lean into the feeling of freedom and embrace the opportunity to be your own boss with the AANA as your partner on this exciting journey toward independence. Enroll now and earn valuable continuing education credits as you chart a new course in your rewarding career. Visit aana.com/1099 to learn more and take the first step toward your new future. The 1099 CRNA Institute. Thrive as your own boss.
Well, I've always heard that vaping can cause popcorn lung.
That's what she would diagnose with.
It would make sense if you're inhaling something that is heated to several hundred degrees. I understand that you're going to lose some of that heat as it travels down your airways, but it does put me in the mind of popcorn. What happens to popcorn or corn when you heat it up? It pops. So if I'm putting something heated up to steam in my lungs, it would make sense to me. That's how I make sense of it.
Yeah, it's causing pathophysiologic scarring of the alveoli for sure. So, and there's some other respiratory things that can happen with vaping. You guys probably heard right before the pandemic, EVALI, which is e-cigarette vaping associated lung injury. And by February of 2020, there were over 2,800 cases of EVALI and over 68 deaths. Sort of got lost in the shuffle, right? Because a month later, the world shut down in the pandemic. It's an acute and subacute pulmonary disease, and it's a diagnosis of exclusion. So the patient has to admit to vaping in the last 90 days. They have to have an absence of another type of pulmonary infection, and they have to have radiographs or a chest x-ray that shows evidence of that. So it looks like ground glass on the chest x-ray or the radiographs.
So has anyone had a heart attack because of vaping as well? I mean, it just...
Yeah. So actually recently another headline, and this was a gentleman, 24-year-old young man in Kentucky that had a heart attack, had an MI from vaping. He had been vaping for 12 years.
Wait. How old was it?
He was 24, so he'd been vaping.
12?
Since he was 12.
Since
My
he was
daddy
12.
started smoking when he was 8 years old.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
he primed tobacco.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
His
yeah.
father was a sharecropper, and so they primed tobacco. So he started smoking when he was 8.
Yeah, it's like I told you. My mom started at 13 or 14, and,
Wow.
So, so he kind of took to social media. His name's Jacob Temple, and he went on TikTok making a bunch of videos encouraging people not to vape anymore. That he not only had a heart attack, but now he has lungs of a 70-year-old.
Well, it makes sense that there'd be cardiovascular problems because smoking causes vasoconstriction. I would assume that
Absolutely.
that this would do the same.
Yeah, there's a component in some of the products called acrylane. It's another thing that's found in the e-liquid, and it causes atherosclerosis and hardening of the arteries.
What other things are found in these juices?
Oh, yeah, there's all kinds of things. There's lots of heavy metals like iron, nickel, cadmium, chromium, and lead. And all of these things can cause respiratory problems, coughing, shortness of breath. Iron can cause metal fume fever, which is something welders typically experience from occupational
Never
hazard.
thought about that. And yes,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah. So there's a lot of bad things. Acetone is another thing that's been found. And don't forget, most people, or not, I don't know about most, but a lot of people tend to vape nicotine, but there's other things that can be vaped too. Cannabis. And I even found one study when I started researching this that, cannabis is the most common thing vaped. And I know there's a lot of buzz around cannabis right now. A lot of people are talking about cannabis, a lot of good things, but cannabis is the most common thing vaped. But there's other things that are vaped like synthetic cannabinoids and then heroin, even fentanyl. And there was a case report of a young person that died vaping cannabis, and the fentanyl derivative was found in the e-juice, and the electronic cigarette was found near his body.
So maybe he vaped fentanyl and then the residue in there?
Yeah.
Combined with it. Oh, my
And he
Lord.
stopped breathing. So.
Jeez. Are there definitive guidelines for anesthesia professionals in dealing with this?
So that's a great...
It wouldn't matter. They're not going to listen.
Yeah, the biggest thing right now, there's no definitive guidelines. We're still learning so much every day that there's just been nothing set in stone put out yet.
Wow. It's kind of scary a little bit.
I think it's, important for us all to know now what we're finding out about these products and how it affects patients under anesthesia. I wanted to know, as a clinician and an educator. So.
Yeah. All these cultural things are changing the way people consume healthcare, the way medical providers treat problems. The GLPs and cannabis and vaping. There's a lot going on that you really have to think through nowadays. That maybe when you started, Sharon, you didn't have to do that.
Well, we didn't have to think about vaping. We had a lot of smokers because I was in Winston-Salem.
Yeah,
right, Tobaccoville,
R.J. Reynolds.
That's right.
Absolutely.
My new office is in an old tobacco warehouse.
That's right.
Exactly. So we had, and if you worked at R.J. Reynolds, every Friday with your paycheck, you got a pack of cigarettes.
Nice, yeah.
I was an ICU nurse and one of the most having the most acutely ill patients in the state. I made $8.03 an hour. And if I would have been a cigarette packer, I would have made more money and got a pack of cigarettes every week on top of that.
That seemed like a pretty good deal, you know? That's
All right,
funny.
let's say a patient is coming to the OR for surgery. Let's say they actually tell you that they vape, and that's a big thing, whether or not they'll tell you. What are the considerations?
That's important. They do need to tell you, and if they don't, you need to ask them, do you smoke or vape?
I've had to change my whole nomenclature because you ask them if they smoke, and they'll say no, and I say, do you vape? Because they don't think that vaping is smoking. They also don't think smoking pot is smoking.
That's right.
And I'll say, it says here, recreational marijuana, do you smoke it or do you eat it?
Right.
And they go, I smoke it. Well, sir, you're a smoker.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
No, I'm not.
One study that surveyed patients coming into the pre-op area, 40% of the patients did not include vaping and smoking.
They don't.
Yeah, they just don't. And so one of the other problems that can happen is they can have wound healing issues. And so
Same with smoking. Yeah,
just like smoking. And a few years ago, there was a really sobering study or case report that was put out by Frackle. And she found that a patient considered herself a non-smoker, and she had been a previously heavy tobacco combustible cigarette smoker. And 3 weeks postoperatively after a bilateral mastectomy, she had complete
wound dehiscence.
Yeah, wound dehiscence. Yeah. So, and she had to have a debridement, and that complicated her course. She was supposed to start post-op chemotherapy, and that delayed it. But so getting back to if the patient comes into the pre-op area, I say the same thing. Do you smoke or vape? And if they do say, yes, I do vape, I say, did you vape today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to know, is it the same day? Just like we ask if you smoked today. How much do you vape? You know, how long have you been vaping? What do you vape? Do you vape nicotine? Some people just vape the flavorings. There's up to 7,000 flavorings, like chocolate, banana pudding, grape, raspberry.
Oh, no wonder kids are doing it.
They do smell good. I mean, whenever that vapor that comes out,
like the blueberry, cotton candy. Yeah.
Cotton candy's big. It does smell good.
Yeah, there's not just menthol, you know, so.
So what type of considerations do you need to be taking during the anesthetic? Yeah.
Well, just like some of our smokers and our COPDers, you need to expect that during the case, they're going to have airway hyperreactivity. They're prone to laryngospasm, bronchospasm. So for induction, you want to make sure that you give a really good, deep, induction dose, and then you might consider something like an LTA or IV lidocaine to decrease their airway reactivity. During the case, as I said, airway hyperreactivity, and then also they might require higher doses of opioids and muscle relaxants. We know from smoking that nicotine induces the cytochrome P450 system, so they might need higher doses of your rocuronium or whatever you're using and your fentanyl. And even abstaining from the nicotine for one day can cause hyperalgesia postoperatively.
I'll tell you from personal experience, because I do a lot of GI, especially on Mondays and Tuesdays. The place I work at, I do about 30 cases a day. It's a lot for an old lady.
You're working.
I'm working hard.
Yeah.
But what I have found in that particular population, because we've got a lot who vape, they hypersalivate. 2 of my worst airway emergencies have been in young men, and when I say young, in their 20s, who were heavy vapors. And I mean, the saliva
it's just coming out.
Is just rolling out of them. And I typically give Robenol pre-op anyway, but I've had 2 big laryngospasms just from the hypersalivation. It is, I mean, we all know that smokers do that. My good friend Jerry Hogan calls it mortar fire, when at the end of the case, whenever you're doing a general anesthetic and, those big old loogies are flying out of the endotracheal tube. He calls them mortar fire. Everybody get back, because you don't want them to, once they cough those things up and then they get back in, used to get back into your circuit and they move every time, or they're hanging in the endotracheal tube. And so we'd take them apart and just let them get mortar fire, heads up.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard that.
If you couldn't catch it. But the salivation is just extreme. Now, I don't understand the physiology if I could sit down or go into AI, but I'm just talking about clinical presentation of somebody who does a lot of these procedures.
Absolutely. And some of the loose recommendations we do have says use an anti-sialagogue, something like glycopyrrobinol, every time. Yeah.
And people will ask, well, of course I'm going to see it, a lot of vapors, because another story, my dad was a smoker, and he asked me, why do smokers have all these belly problems, stomach problems? And I'm like, Daddy, you really think that smoke comes down and it sees that bifurcation and says, ooh, I think I'm just going to go down the lungs. No, it goes down
everywhere
into your stomach too. My dad wound up dying of lung cancer, as did my mother, which it always irritated me. He kept on smoking. She died when she was 50, and he lived to be 77. And one day after he had had a thoracotomy and his lung had collapsed and they wanted to keep him in the hospital, keep chest tube in. And I'm like, just let me take him home. I can take care of the chest tube. I can take care of everything. I come home. He's smoking. Daddy, why are you smoking? And you could see the smoke in the tube and on the chest tube. He's like, well, how do you know I'm smoking? I can see the smoke in the chest tube.
Right.
Okay. I said, I just don't understand. I just don't understand. You're one of the smartest men I've ever known in my life. I don't understand why this has whooped you like this. He goes, I have enjoyed every cigarette I have ever smoked, and I like it. And I don't know why you don't like it. And I looked at him and I said, let me tell you something. Picking up something that has fire on one end of it and put the other end in my mouth never seemed like a smart thing to do. And then I backed up because he still would have wrung my jaws. And only people in the South understand what that means. So, and my sister vapes, or she did vape until she found out. She sent me a report of chest x-ray, and I didn't know what it was, who it was. And she goes, do you know what this means? I said, yeah, that means it's a heart attack waiting to happen. And then she said, it's mine. And she has hypercalcification in her coronaries, bordering on blockages. She's 4 years younger than me.
But she quit after that.
She did.
Oh,
she did quit. She did quit. But does that mean that it just stops the progression of the disease? I don't think there's any regression of disease.
Yeah.
I don't know that answer.
I think we're just going to find out more and more about what the long-term effects are,
Because it really hasn't been around that long.
No, only since 2007. So
that's not long.
Yeah. And, as a parent, I hear about, other friends of mine's kids saying, oh, yeah, I found my son with a vape. And, so my kids have to hear it all the time from me. They kind of sick of hearing about it. And they're like, especially, but they've even had they play football, and they recently had a teammate kicked off for vaping cannabis,
Oh, snap.
So, yeah. He got off the football team, so.
Well, Beth, as we wrap up here, anything you want to leave our audience with?
Oh, well.
Besides, don't vape.
That's right. Don't do that. Well, I think as an anesthesia provider, we have to be aware of these products, what's in some of the products, and how we deal with them when they show up to our OR, and how we can manage these patients. And it is similar to the smokers, the COPDers, the combustible cigarettes. But as we find out more and more, I think this is going to be increasingly a big public health problem. And so I just wanted to get the message out there to my colleagues and the future generation with the RNAs that these patients are coming in, they're showing up in our OR, and we have to be kind of aware of how to manage them.
Ready and prepared, for sure. Well, Beth, we want to thank you for being on the show. I know that you thought it was an honor to be on our show,
No.
but we
Oh,
feel like
yes,
it's an
no,
honor
I'm
so
to,
honored and humbled.
to be able to have you on the show. And you always have done such good work, and you're very humble, and you have such a good demeanor, and you're doing good things. And so we want to wish you all the luck and continued
thank you
success.
So much. Yeah, I'll see you guys around North Carolina.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right.
We'll see you at the state meeting.
That's all right. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Sharon, I think it's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Mask. If you enjoy the show and want to help us grow, the best way to support us is simple. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, share the show on social media, and tell your friends. Your word of mouth is what keeps us going strong. We're proud to consistently rank in the top 50 medical podcasts nationwide and to be #1 in the CRNA community. All thanks to listeners like you. Your support helps us stay there, and we couldn't do it without you. We'll see you on the next Beyond the Mask.
Hi, this is Jackie Rolls, President and founder of Our Hearts, Your Hands, a global support anesthesia community. We'd like to thank all of our prior donors and also say that we are accepting donations, welcome donations, to send a nurse anesthetist or even a nurse from a low-resource country to get further academic education or attend professional conferences or even equipment for some companies. Thank you so much for your support.